Um,
So,
go ahead.
so do me a favor. So I know that you mentioned to me that you had some issues with your body image and how maybe the world saw you and how maybe you saw yourself. So take us through
Mhm.
the beginning. Which one happened first? Was it how you viewed yourself or was it how others viewed you?
So I started off as a tomboy. I always felt I had more in common with guys than girls. I didn't really get girls. They seemed kind of obsessed with things that made absolutely no difference. And, they would be talking about playing house and, taking care of a baby. And I'm like, I don't want to do that. I want to go play in the grass and roll down the hill. So I play with the boys in the area until, of course, we started getting close toward the end of elementary school, and all of a sudden, it's like I had cooties, and they all flocked away from me, and I had to somehow figure out how to interface with girls. But uh, I just never really understood the obsession with clothes or with dressing well. It just didn't make any sense to me. Clothes were clothes. And if it looked passable, I was going to wear it. And I was mostly concerned about function. So I wore a lot of shorts and a lot of shirts, and it was just one layer, and that was about it. Because any more than that, it was too much for me. I'd get overheated and, blah, blah, blah. And I just never really understood why one would care more than just covering themselves. And it was not until I got into high school that I really realized what the real difference is. I think part of it is because I grew up poor. And so most of the clothes that I got were hand me down. And it may have actually passed through like multiple hands before it actually got to me. I mean, I wore stuff that probably hadn't actually been manufactured since the 80s. And that was when I was born. But I mean, that's what I had at the time. But then in high school, I had access to a little bit more money because my mom was actually doing better. And I suddenly realized, hey, I've seen some really fantastic looking women who dress for their body shape, who have these very beautiful, clean lines and the ruffles, and it just accentuates their body until they look so statuesque. It's like somebody just chiseled them out of stone. And I was like, you know what? I could just dress myself like I'm an art project. And it just completely changed my thinking. It wasn't about being girly anymore. Now it was about being a good artist. And so I completely changed my image, and I started buying clothes that accentuated what I had to work with, which, because of the 2 years of steroids, so that I didn't die from ITP in high school, I had kind of a significant body at the time. Yeah, so I was able to take what I had to work with and completely change it around so that now I actually felt attractive. And to people who weren't obsessed with specific body types, I probably looked attractive too.
I know for me in high school, my struggle was the other way in high school. I was probably like 100 pounds
Oh,
in
wow.
high school. Yes. If there was a strong breeze, I would end up in Kansas with Dorothy and Tin Man
Mhm.
and all of them, right?
You wore the big
My
shirts,
issue,
didn't you? The oversized shirt.
no, no, you know what? I was poor
Ooh.
like you, right? So
No, no,
I
no. I mean,
had
I had a friend who was like that, and she wore a really big t-shirt to try and hide it.
no, I wish. What I did was I had clothes similar to you where it was passed down. So they were a little bit bigger, but they weren't large to hide it, right? So what I did is I wanted to
Mhm.
understand how I was being viewed. And a lot of people would look at me as, okay, we know he's poor. He probably doesn't have food, probably doesn't have money. So that's why I looked the way I did and I weighed the way I did. And it opened me up to a lot of criticism and a lot of name calling and what we would call
Mhm.
today bullying. But back then, I didn't really look at it that way. But in hindsight, it definitely was. So
Yeah.
that's why when I asked you how you felt, I know how I felt struggling the other way, right?
Oh,
And
yes.
then for you, like, as you got throughout high school and then you started entering adulthood, how was your view of yourself at that point?
I was always bullied. I definitely was always bullied throughout my life. Even before I had the weight, I was still bullied. I'm actually autistic. And so a lot of people had noticed that I was different from everybody else. And of course, that makes people uncomfortable. And so, of course, they have to make that my problem. And they have to tease me about it, or they have to tease me about something else that they have invented that is bothering them. But being autistic, I was also very insulated from the world around me, and I was mostly living up here instead of out here in the real world with everyone else. So I didn't quite react the same as most people do to bullying. I was still able to go by my own guiding star a lot of the time, which was I'm actually special and I'm here to do important things. And I just have to find what my greatness is, and then I'll be able to do them. And so, although, yes, it made me feel bad, and yes, I had a lot of trouble trying to interact with people, and it definitely traumatized me. I didn't end up with the major, suicidal, I shouldn't even be here. I should kill myself kind of tendencies that somebody in my position probably would have had. Because I mean, I did get bullied pretty hard now that I think about it. I remember there was this one guy who would insist on threatening me with the casts that he was inevitably sporting throughout high school. And now that I think about it, he probably was getting bullied at home by some adult who was tossing him down the stairs or whatever. Because seriously, every time he got a cast off, he'd end up with another one on just a few months later.
I
And
always say, like if you look at it, people who get bullied, there's something happening at home,
mm-hmm. Yeah,
right?
yeah. People who bully, they're usually bullied by somebody else and they're just passing the pain along. They feel small and weak, and they feel better if they transition to the place of power where they're now bullying someone else and make someone else feel small and weak. And I actually, in high school, I used psychology to defeat all my bullies.
Ooh, share that tip with me, please.
Right now, I do not recommend doing this because, it's a reverse bullying situation again, which is not a good thing. However, I did discover that every single bully got something different from bullying me. And if I not only took that away, but took away more from them having bullied me, now suddenly they didn't want to do that anymore. So, um, let's see. I'm trying to remember. Okay, I'm just going to start with the last one. The last one that was really, really difficult was the guy with the cast. I had a really tough time pinning down what it was that he was getting out of things because I tried everything I could think of that was working for the other bullies, and none of it made an impact. As it turns out, what it was he wanted to see someone else more scared than he felt. So what I did was when he was bullying me and I was having a lot of trouble, we were stuck in this little area. It was the fenced in area of the pool at school. And so there was really nowhere I could go. There were two sets of bleachers, and he insisted on making the entire bleachers bounce, which was really annoying for me. And he kept following me from one set to the other. And one of them was in the sun, which I hate the sun. and the other one was in the shade, which was much better for me. And I started off in the shade. I went to the sun. He followed me there. I go back to the shade. I have had it with this jerk. I'm just done. So I finally decide to give it a try and see what happens. And so I take my acting skills, and I remember all of the times I've ever been mad, and I just build up all of that rage, and I just take that emotion and I throw it at him. You should have seen the look on his face. I mean, it was the money shot. He was like, and he ran. And he went to the other set of bleachers in the sun, and he sat there quietly for the rest of that hour-long block of school. And then I didn't see him for 2 weeks, except in class. And he stayed on the other side of our entire class the entire time.
If I
He
may
tried one
share,
time
yeah.
to make fun of me, and I walked right up to him and I said that, oh, um, uh, let's see, he had said something mean to me, and I said, all I see is a mirror, basically saying that that's him, not me. And that was it. He never talked to me again. He never threatened me again. He never did anything again. My friend Claire, she was just awestruck. She was like, how did you do that? Apparently, she'd seen how scary this guy could be.
If I may interrupt and share a similar story that I had, have you ever seen the movie Django Unchained?
I haven't. No, tell me about it.
Yeah, so it's a movie where a young man is captured and he's put into servitude and he's a slave, right? So it's that type
Mhm.
of era. But at the end of the movie, he gets his revenge on all those people who's enslaved him, who's beaten him, who's taken advantage of him. I was that person back in high school. Everyone that bullied me, as soon as I got bigger, I got stronger and I became a better person, more confident. That's what I did. I started to have my comeuppance on each and every one of them. So not necessarily physically, right? It was just that I made sure that I was in a better space,
Mhm.
right? Emotionally and mentally. And that's how I got my quote unquote revenge. Because similar to you, there's times where it can be very difficult because we're so young and we're not as
Mhm.
prepared back then as maybe we would have been today if we were going through it. And I think that's the struggle for a lot of kids
Mhm.
because when you look at high school, our bodies are changing,
Mhm.
our social interactions are changing. There's all these things that are going on. So for you, um, I know we spoke about this earlier in the green room. When you look back on what
Mhm.
you went through, how do you feel knowing that you've been able to overcome all of that and live a successful life?
Well,